Hello everyone, and welcome back to the series where I talk about myself and my life in music. During my last year at college, I worked in the school's recording studio. Today I'm going to tell you a bit about that experience and some of the things I learned from it. As I've mentioned before, I did my music degree out at Humber College in Toronto. Our final year, we all did a recording project in the school studio. This was our version of a thesis. Every student got 4 4-hour blocks to record over the course of the year. We were able to do whatever we wanted, then we handed it in for evaluation at the end of the semester. Professional engineers were hired as faculty for the projects, but a handful of students like myself were hired on as assistant engineers. Our job was to help set up, tear down, run Pro Tools, swap out mics, or whatever else needed to be done, and of course make coffee runs. It was a really cool job, and there was a huge range of projects that were recorded, from jazz to pop music to metal and everything in between. I played on friends' recordings, produced another student's project, and recorded my own 3-song EP. It's available over at my second channel. I'll put up a link in the description if you want to check it out. This job provided me an opportunity to spend some serious time behind the glass, which was something new and exciting. I honed my Pro Tools chops through this and learned a lot about how to record music, skills I still use regularly today. So here are some interesting things I picked up while working in the studio. You learn to walk differently. A recording studio has cables strewn about everywhere, many of these connected to highly expensive things. I remember when I first started, I tripped on some cables, knocked over some mics, not a good feeling. Before long, as soon as I felt a cable under my foot, I learned to do this weird balancing act where I froze in place, pulling out my foot just in time to step over it safely. I still instinctually do this today. A samurai guitarist does not trip on cables. Another thing I quickly figured out is that an unorganized studio is an absolute nightmare to deal with. Cable management is crucial so that whenever something goes wrong, you can quickly and easily fix it. On top of that, you want to eliminate as many tripping hazards as possible. Not every musician has mastered the safety step like I have. Trust me, you don't want to see a drummer falling into his drum kit, the whole thing topples over and makes a horrible sound. And being neat and organized makes it way faster to tear down, which is a high priority when the last session ends at 2 a.m. On the more musical side of things, I was surprised at how hard it is to get a truly great product. It's not that difficult to get something that is good, but to take it that 10% further is where the real effort is. I remember talking to one of my professors about this. I mentioned how that nothing I'd ever heard recorded in the studio ever sounded as good as anything on the radio, despite the fact that there was the highest end gear. He said the big difference is a culmination of all the minute differences, things that we simply didn't have enough time to do in our 16 hours of allotted recording time. For example, finding the perfect guitar and amp combination took Slash days when he was recording Appetite for Destruction. Rewriting parts that aren't working, getting the mix just perfect, and countless other little things take forever but really add up. My goal for my personal recording session was to get it as good as the sounds in my head. I think I came close with one song called The Field of White. You can be the judge of that for yourself, link in the description. I also found out that no matter what instrument you play, you've got to make sure it's set up before a session. I saw so much time wasted to stuff like squeaky drum pedals, poorly intonated guitars, rattling snare drums. Things like this you don't think about can be a major detriment. On another note, one of the nice things about the job was that all the assistant engineers were students, and it was known that we all had a lot to learn. It was always better to say that we didn't know how to do something so we could be taught how to instead of trying to wing it. This would happen all the time. An engineer would ask me to say, set up the headphone monitoring system. I would have no idea how to do it. I would ask him, he would show me, no big deal. If I were to try to figure it out myself, I surely would have screwed it up, wasting everyone's time, eventually being taught how to do it anyways. Now, there were some sessions that stood out as some of the better ones, and there were a couple of common factors. For example, a good atmosphere helps make good music. When everyone's enjoying themselves, things have a way of turning out better. Things one can do to help with the atmosphere: bring snacks and beer, have realistic expectations, and be prepared. When time is limited, you gotta do the bulk of the work beforehand. If you're learning sections, working out parts, or rehearsing, you're wasting time that would be better spent recording. Pre-production, pre-production, pre-production. When I was tracking guitar for my sessions, I had every single note worked out beforehand. This included solos, and I had a couple backup ideas in case something wasn't working. And even when you are highly prepared, things always end up taking longer than you expect. Planning some buffer times and some breaks is a great way to help keep stress levels low. If you do end up with extra time, you can always go back and do some experimenting, which often leads to great things. Now, like I mentioned before, we had a massive range of equipment. One of the surprising things I found out was that the expensive stuff wasn't always the best choice. I remember one session session with a female vocalist, we were trying to find the microphone that best suited her voice. We tried some U87s, some U47s, and nothing was happening. These mics retail for something like $4,000, so on a whim we decided to go to the opposite end of the spectrum. We used an Apex 205, which is worth like $150, and it was perfect. Another thing I found out early on is traditional jazz is painfully boring to record, at least for me it was. You set up, press record, and tried to stay engaged, which can be tough when you're on the 8th minute of the 5th take of Autumn Leaves. On the flip side, I found pop music to be by far the most interesting and difficult as far as the production elements go. With pop, you have no room for error. Everything needs to be shined to perfection, there are countless overdubs, and everything needs to be crafted very strategically. I've found with things like jazz or rock, the looseness can often add to the mojo of a song. I will say though, I could usually get excited about some element of the recording, even if it wasn't a genre that I usually listen to, though with traditional jazz, that was rather tough. There you have it, a bunch of things I learned while working in a recording studio. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you'd like to support the content I create, please consider heading over to www.shopsamuraiguitarist.com, where I just released my first merch line. It's this traditional guitar playing samurai, available in a number of different styles and colors. If you're interested, hit that link over there. A big thank you to everyone who supports my channel through Patreon. I'm Samurai Guitarist, and I will see you all again soon.